Carry to. Oh, my apologies, listeners, for the dead air. It is tax season, my personal favorite time of the year. And since yours truly never fully gets any time off, you have to bear with me filing live here on Necro Radio. Yes, I am pained to inform our lively listeners that not even the sweet release of death will free you from the dreaded taxman. They're always rooting through your pockets for loose change, aren't they? Nickel and diming you at every turn. You know, at this point for me, shouldn't it be considered grave robbery? Ha! Levity. Let's see. Filing status? Dead. Profit and loss. Well, everything's a loss at this point. Charitable donations? Ha! Oh, how rude of me. You don't have to sit and listen to me trudging through this tedious task. Why don't I throw on some stories? This story revolves around a campfire myth, and how those chasing authentic scares may sometimes get more than they bargain for. This legend is labeled, When the Log Rolls Over.
Have any of you ever heard of the ghosts of the DuPont Candy Logging Company? Years ago, there was once a logging company in these very mountains. It was a small outfit of loggers, with the goal of clearing out all the trees in the area. It being a job that was to take some time, they built a small cabin at the base of the mountain, beside the river, for the loggers to live in over the months of felling the trees. Each day was split in two, a morning shift and an evening shift. The loggers for each shift would head up the mountain and saw trees down by hand. They would set pillars into the ground and stack the logs behind them, and when they were ready, they'd carefully and meticulously sledge the pillars to send the logs rolling down the face of the mountain to the river below, where they'd be bundled and sent downstream to be retrieved by trucks. This was a cycle of work that had continued for months into this job. But like all things, sometimes repetition can lead to comfort, and comfort can lead to laziness, and laziness to mistakes. One night, the logs were stacked and ready to be sent rolling down the hill. The men of the evening shift were tired and ready to get back to the cabin to rest their weary eyes. The foreman knew that they were behind on their weekly quotas, and each night they slipped more and more behind. In his haste to get things moving faster, his directing of the pillar sledging was misunderstood and out of synchronization. And so, the final strike of the support pillars caused the logs to roll off the measured path and down towards the cabin where the morning shift slept below. The foreman cried out warnings to the men below that were drowned out by the rolling of the logs. And tragically, the cabin was struck by the flood of timber, demolishing the sleeping quarters and killing the vast majority of the men within. The foreman could not bear the guilt of this tragedy, and so he climbed a tree with a noose around his neck, tied it to the highest branch, and jumped. And now, all these years later, every full moon like tonight, they say you can still hear the foreman's warning cries to the doomed men. If you listen closely, you can hear him cry out.
All right, stop, I finally say. This is the dumbest story I've ever heard. The rest of the group looks at me from around the campfire. Kyle snorts.
You're not even gonna let me finish the story, Skeeter?
It's a dumb story, I say, throwing my hands up. You expect us to believe a logging company would be that dumb to build a cabin right under where they're rolling logs down a hill? That's dumb, dude.
It's real, dude.
Kyle shouts defiantly.
My grandpa used to work National Park Service, and he said that...
Oh, everybody has a grandpa or an uncle. I cut him off. It's real 'cause they say so.
You're really bumming out every one of these scary stories tonight, Skeet.
Josh pipes up from across the fire, his arms draped around Tiffany's shoulders.
Yeah, for real.
She chimes in. Bro, none of this is scary, I say. These stories don't even sound believable.
Dude, the cabin is very real,
Kyle says.
We drove by on the way up here. I can literally take you to it right now.
I roll my eyes in response.
Oh, you can see the logs still there that took out part of the cabin.
Yeah, now I know you're full of it, I say. They just left the logs there.
All right then, let's go,
Kyle says, standing up. The rest of the circle looks confused, looking back and forth between us. I shrug my shoulders. I know he's full of it, so I figure I'll call him on his bluff. Okay then, let's go everybody, I tell them as I stand from my camping chair. Come and see this haunted cabin.
Nah, we're good.
Josh says.
We saw it on the way up.
Tiffany adds. Now I feel more annoyed. Everyone is going to add credibility to this ridiculous story, hoping I just cave in and accept it. Well, I need someone to go with us to confirm which one of us is right, I exclaim, really hoping that finally someone will just relent.
Fine, dude, I'll go.
Brandon groans from across the fire.
I need to stretch my legs anyway. Also, maybe it'll finally get you to shut up and let people finish some stories.
The rest of the campers all laugh and throw marshmallows in our direction as the three of us begin to descend down the trail we drove up. We walked for about a mile in silence. The moon was full above us, casting blue, soft light that illuminated most of our surroundings. But still, the flashlight beams from each of us guided our descent just in case. The trail was relatively rocky, and we all stumbled several times. Brandon was the first to say anything.
This is so dumb, dude. Why can't you just buy into the story, Skeeter? Even if it's dumb, who cares?
Because, man, it's weak. If we're gonna do the whole scary campfire stories thing, I want to actually be scared, dude.
Okay, bro. But if you're gonna be the scary story gatekeeper, why don't you tell them then?
Brandon asks. Oh, I got some good ones for when we get back. Don't you worry.
We're here.
Kyle cuts me off. I look eagerly in the direction his flashlight is pointing. About 20 yards away off the trail sits a crumbling old cabin. It looks almost reclaimed by the forest. Moss grows on the roof and young trees grow right next to it, almost shielding it from sight.
See?
Kyle says. Okay, so the cabin is real, I snort. Doesn't mean the story is. Kyle shakes his head.
Oh, unbelievable, dude. Look, follow me.
We carve our way through the overgrowth and trees, closer to the cabin and round to the backside. A pile of moss-ridden timber had taken out the corner of it. I look back at Kyle in the moonlight and see the smug smile on his face.
Alright, so now we know it's real.
Brandon says, sighing.
Can we go back now?
This doesn't prove anything, I exclaim, gesturing to the logs. And even if it was real, the story is still not scary, dude. Kyle pinches his brow, shaking his head. Then he looks back to me and smiles. What? I ask.
If you're not scared,
He begins.
then why don't you sleep in there tonight?
Brandon's eyebrows raise and they both stare at me in the silence for a moment. I look back and forth at them, unsure how to respond to this.
Well,
Kyle says, staring at me with his big I win grin. How? I mean, we can't even get in, I finally stammer, eyeing the cabin. All those logs are blocking going in that way, and all the windows and doors are boarded up. I figured that would put an end to it, but looking back at Kyle, I could see his smile had only grown.
Oh, we can get in,
He said.
There's a hole in the foundation on the other side that leads into the cellar. Me and my cousin found it last summer. Come on.
We follow him further around the cabin to the other end, and he points to a void where the dirt and stone foundation met. The ground had sloughed away, creating about a 2-foot gap, just big enough for someone to crawl down in. Okay, but I began, my mouth moving faster than my mind as it raced to find an acceptable excuse. But I don't have any of my sleeping stuff. I'm not going to sleep on dirt and...
Oh, we'll go back and get your bag and stuff,
Kyle interrupted.
Won't we, Brandon?
Brandon nodded, silently staring at the hole. I swallowed, and realized I wasn't going to get out of this without wimping out. Fine, dude, whatever, I finally said. I'll do it. They both stared at me with wide eyes, the grin gone from Kyle's face.
Are you serious, Skeet?
Brandon asks. Yeah, whatever, I say, waving them off. Just go get my stuff. I drop to a sitting position and slide my legs through the hole. Brandon stepped in to help, but ended up just hovering, uselessly. I grip a siding plank with both hands and begin to lower myself through. I slide, and when my fingers can't hold on any longer, I drop, falling about a foot or so onto the dirt below. It is pitch dark, with only some blue light from the moon filtering in from the hole.
You good, dude?
Brandon calls down. Yeah, I answer, switching my flashlight on. Just don't forget my stuff. I'll look around a bit. Just pound on the front door when you're back.
Okay,
Brandon says. Kyle laughs as I hear them begin to walk away. I move the beam around, illuminating the cellar. The ceiling was low. Old trash littered the floor and graffiti marked the stone walls. I spotted some stairs and began to make my way up them, testing each step with my weight before committing fully. I pushed through the door at the top and stepped into a hallway, lined on both sides by several other doors. The cabin was only slightly less dark than the cellar below. I walked down the creaking hallway, shining my flashlight around. The walls were split and buckling, it seemed. I was surprised, honestly, that this place hadn't been bulldozed. It looked like a strong breeze would send it crumbling. I reached the end of the stretch of hallway and found the room that had the overly boarded up entry door. You wouldn't know the room's purpose, with it being completely empty. There were scraps of newspapers, wrappers, and old beer cans scattered everywhere. People had obviously used this cabin at least somewhat more recently. It eased me a bit. If it didn't collapse then, I would hopefully be fine. At the far end of the cabin, opposite the front door, was a kitchenette. The only appliance that remained was an old stove. I decided that I would sleep right on the floor of this front room. It would be the most open place for me to see any animals or anything skittering about. I began to kick at the trash in the middle of the room, pushing it off to the sides, clearing a spot on the floor. And then I heard something. Something faint. I froze, my foot in mid-scoop of cans, and listened. I nearly jumped out of my skin and heard Kyle and Brandon laughing on the other side. You douchebags! I yelled.
Me to set the hole, Skeet,
Kyle called from the other side of the door. I made my way back down the hall and down into the cellar. I shined my flashlight at the hole. Kyle and Brandon's peeking faces squinted in the light and retreated.
Ah, watch it,
Kyle exclaimed.
Here, Skeet.
Brandon said, sliding my roll of padding through the hole first. I grabbed it and placed it on the ground next to me.
You know it's not too late, Skeeter.
Kyle called down.
You can just admit you're scared and come back to camp with us.
I grabbed my sleeping bag from Brandon and called back. Nope. As tempting as it was, I really didn't want to give Kyle the satisfaction.
You know, Brittany asked about you.
Brandon said to me, shoving my pillow awkwardly through the hole.
She thought it was pretty cool that you're gonna sleep here.
Really? I asked. This bolstered me in my decision. I'd had a crush on Brittany since freshman year. Maybe after this, she'd want to go out sometime.
Yeah.
Brandon said, rising to his feet. He looked down at me through the hole.
You sure you're good, dude?
Yeah, I nodded up at them. Just don't forget about picking me up in the morning.
Yeah, we won't.
Brandon said.
Good night, Skeeter.
Kyle taunted, and I heard him laughing again as they retreated from the hole. I gathered my stuff under my arms and gripped my flashlight tight, and made my way up the stairs and back to the front room. I finished kicking my clearing and then rolled out my bedding. I was really more worried about spiders and bugs crawling all over me as I slept. But I pushed those thoughts out as best I could and climbed into my sleeping bag. I fluffed up the pillow and stared at the ceiling. The roof was slouching slightly. A beam was completely split in two. Oh, great, I whispered aloud to myself. With my luck, tonight would be the night the whole roof came down. I looked at my watch and saw it was almost 2 a.m. I only needed to be in here for a few more hours and then daylight would be here. I took a deep breath, looked around quickly for any sign of crawling things, and then nestled into my bedding and closed my eyes. I must have dozed off, but a sound shot my eyes wide open. I blinked in a daze and checked my watch. Only 30 or so minutes had passed. This is gonna be a long night. I tucked my arms behind my head and stared back at the ceiling. I wondered to myself if Kyle's story was true. Had this cabin really been the place where a bunch of loggers had died? And if so, had they really died from the logs at the back of the cabin? Then I heard it again. It was louder this time.
When the log rolls over, you shall all surely die.
I shot upright. I looked over at the front door. I'd heard that before. Kyle, you douche canoe! I hissed at him. Get out of here! There was no response from the other side. Kyle, I whisper, less sure now that he's messing with me out there. The voice didn't seem to come from that direction anyway. It seemed to come from back down the hallway. Maybe Kyle had crawled into the cellar too and was down the hall. I fumbled on the ground for my flashlight, grabbed hold of it, and clicked it on. From where I was sitting in the middle of the room, I couldn't see very far past the corner that led into the hall, and my flashlight beam did nothing to pierce the darkness that rounded the corner. All right, Kyle, I called out. Ha ha, you got me. Now let's go back to camp. I swallowed as I waited for him to laugh and gloat over his win, but there was nothing. The cabin is eerily quiet, and then the silence is broken.
When the log rolls over, you shall all surely die.
I shuffled back in fear out of my sleeping bag and up against the back wall, as far from the voice as I could possibly get. The back of my head slams the wall, and my hand slices on a broken bottle. I barely feel the pain. My heart beats in my chest like it is ready to burst free. There is no possible way I can pretend I'm imagining it now. Fight or flight kicks in, and my body wants to run, but I know that my only exit will lead me toward the voice, back down the hall. I frantically look around the wide-open room. No hope in getting through the front door. There are half a dozen boards nailed over it, as well as a giant chain threaded across it. Past the kitchenette is a small window over the sink, a single panel of plywood covering it. I have no way of knowing how big the window itself is beneath it, though. It may not be wide enough for me to get out. I turn my beam back to the hallway. I know I have no choice but to book it down the hallway, hope that I pass whatever this is, and make it down the cellar and out of the hole. I map out my exit plan in my head, but I can't remember which door in the hallway leads to the cellar. I know it will be on the right-hand side, but is it the third or fourth door down? I try to control my breathing and start to prop myself up, but my legs are like jelly. They shake uncontrollably and drop me back to my sitting position. Pure panic begins to settle in, and I feel myself begin to hyperventilate. Come on, Skeeter. Just get up, I whisper to myself.
When the log rolls over, you shall all surely
That was all the motivation I needed. I shot to my feet and raced down the hallway, and gambled on the third door down instead of the fourth. I burst the door open and freeze in my tracks. It is there that I see the source of this mysterious voice. A hole in the ceiling filters in blue moonlight that illuminates a yellowing porcelain toilet. Standing atop its cracked seat is a solitary ant staring into the bowl below at several of his insect comrades that balance atop a turd. And once more, he cries out,
When the log rolls over, you shall all surely die.
See the looks on your faces. Check your calendars, numbnuts. Oh, it really is my favorite day of the year. You all even fell for the whole taxing the dead bit. I don't even make any money. Oh, you really thought I was filling out tax forms? I'm doing Mad Libs. Oh, let's see. Plural noun, suckers. That's rich. Okay. I apologize. I know you're all here for true terror. Now that I got that out of my system, I'll give you a real scary story. A story straight from the drawer we saved for the most frightening of fictions. Oh, this one's a screamer. This tale's titled Skinwalkin.
I ran faster than I ever have in my life. It was supposed to be another late-night jog to cool off, just like I always did after every other time David and I got into a heated argument. I would go out into the woods behind our home. There were a few winding, infrequently used trails that cut through it. It was typically a quiet, peaceful area, a place I would jog through to clear my head and simmer my emotions down. But not tonight. I first saw it standing among the trees, up the hill off the shoulder of the trail. A silhouette of what looked like a man, watching me. My heart had skipped. I thought at first to turn and head for home, back down the trail. But then it dropped to all fours and charged me. Panic had flooded my decision-making, and I bolted in the opposite direction of its charge, off the path and into the woods. Now, here I was, running at a speed I have never anticipated myself capable of, dodging trees standing and leaping over the fallen. I risk a glance back over my shoulder. It is keeping the pace. The shadowy figure runs like an animal, yet somehow it seems like it's holding back, almost like it's toying with me. I turn my gaze forward, too late to avoid a drop in a ravine, and I tumble down its side. I feel a pop in my ankle, and I roll down the dirt onto the rocks below. I cry out in pain and look up at the top of the ravine. The thing stands at the edge, staring down at me. And then he crouches to all four limbs again and slowly begins to walk down the side of the ravine. It weaves from side to side like an animal would, to more easily make its descent. It moves slowly, its gaze never moving from me. It knows it has me trapped now. I crawl to the other side of the ravine. My ankle radiates pain with each beat of my pounding heart.
Help!
I cry out.
Someone please help me!
I try to claw my way up the ravine, but the soil and rocks give way and I slide back to the bottom. I roll onto my back in defeat and sob. The thing had reached the bottom and was slowly walking toward me, its footsteps silent. Then it rises to 2 feet and looms over me. And then, to my terror, it speaks.
Wow, lady, you run really fast. But I'm faster. And lucky for me, I love fast food.
As it lowers itself down to me, unhinging its jaw, I realize, in horror, what hellish creature was about to devour me. It was a Skinwalkin.
I got him again! Oh, God. Oh, I love Fool's Holy Day. It's just too easy. Thinking I get taxed like I make any money at all. Oh, no. No, I'm just doomed to do this for all eternity, with no promise or hope of any sort of return or reward. Oh, I've made myself sad. Back to my Mad Lib. Adjective, sad. Noun, a sad man. Big Blue is